welcome back, and thank you for staying with us on Daybreak Extra this morning. Now let's move on to our next topic of discussion, and we'll be discussing creating opportunities in the corporate world for women. Today is all about women. We just finished with, Ramadan, women and everything. So the underrepresentation of women not only hurts women, but also impacts corporate performance. Now, research has actually shown that companies with well-represented gender diversity in leadership are 50% more likely to perform better than their peers. More inclusion of women can bring varied approaches to problems, increase employee satisfaction, and foster collaboration. Now, women in leadership positions benefit company culture as they are more likely to incorporate employee-friendly practices and speak out about the importance of gender and racial diversity than senior-level men. Now, we have with us in the studio today Mrs. Bukola Maye. She is a human resource specialist and an entrepreneur, and she's here to discuss creating opportunities in the corporate world for women. Good morning, Mrs. Bukola, and thank you so much for joining us on Daybreak Extra.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so just, as the title of the discussion has actually said, creating opportunities for women in the corporate world. We don't even want to go into politics and, other aspects of the society. Now, if you were actually to rate, would you actually say there are lots of there's lots of representation of women in the corporate world as opposed to men?
I think more and more we're starting to see diversity and inclusion of women in the workplace. Unlike before, a lot of women, culturally, even in Nigeria, women were supposed to be at home, raising their kids, raising their home. But now we're seeing more women go out there, put themselves out there, and go get work. Women are tired. They don't want to sit at home anymore. They want to add value. They want to add impact, especially to the society, because, women were nurturers. And anything we put our hands into just has a way of blooming, and blossoming. So yes, I would say now, more than before, we're seeing a lot of more women in the workplace. Yeah.
So what is, we should ask in a way that why is it so important for women to have opportunities, to be created for them in the corporate world?
It's important because in life, generally, there must be a balance. You understand? We can't always just see men, even in terms of decision making and ideas. Women bring a different perspective to everything. Even in the household, you see women bringing in different values, into the home. So it's very important that we have women represented because we're everywhere, we're everywhere. You can't be in an environment where it's just men, you know what I mean? So it's really important that we have women in the workplace because that inclusion brings an amazing plethora of ideas, of values, of decision-making processes, things like that. I think is what makes it important for women to be there, because when women are not represented, it almost takes us back to to the olden days where women didn't have rights. But now women have rights and they know their rights, so they should be represented. They should be working, and that's very important. And I think that's why they should be included. Yeah.
All right, now you talked about, women having and knowing their rights.
Yes.
But do you agree that in some corporate work environments, they don't believe that women actually have rights? Because in as much as we all agree that, women should be, all over, there are lots of challenges that actually come with that. So let's talk about women are subjected to lots of harassment. Yes, and when you talk about, the pay
equity.
Yeah, the pay equity. It's not it. You have women even working more than some men, but because you talked about culture as well.
Yes.
They feel okay, since they're men, they deserve more, and they end up getting paid
more.
Better or even more than these women. What are your thoughts on that?
So yes, you're absolutely right. You're spot on with that. I think the more we start to include women in the workplace, the more we would see some of these changes happening. Because when women start to rise to leadership positions, they would ensure that certain processes and policies are put in place in the workplace. Because yes, sexual harassment is a prevalent thing, especially in these parts of the world. So organizations need women who have probably been through it before to set policies and standards for those organizations to avert such things from happening to women. You know, there are some sectors in Nigeria that for you to get promoted, you need to have sexual relations with your employer or with your line manager and things like that. You know, it's a condition precedent to promotion, which should never be the case, because when men are promoted, they don't have to, subdue themselves to, to be promoted. So as long as your work speaks for itself, then you shouldn't have to compromise yourself or your integrity. I think when we start to rise to leadership positions, which means organizations generally have to start creating policies that help women, like pay equity, for example. There's no reason why we are on the same role, same qualification, same everything, and then you're getting paid more than me. What's the reason? Because you're a man. Okay, how does being a man add more value to the position? I think we need to start looking more into some of our corporate policies in-house so that there can be more inclusion, proper inclusion, pay equity, diversity, leadership roles and things like that, because that's the only way we're going to move forward as women. And the more women rise to these positions, the more we will start to see that these things are changing. Yeah.
Yes, you mentioned leadership roles.
Yes.
And when it comes to culture, let's not even just limit to Nigeria, but African culture in general. There is this disagreement from the men thinking women should not lead. And it's something that women have been trying to break barriers on, trying to reach the top. So with that, there's a lot of women not given opportunity, even if they should find their way in the corporate world. There is no opportunity where people just undermine her mind when it comes to decision making and all that. How do you think things like that could actually be averted?
Again, the more organizations employ women, the more we can see some of these things changing. Because the reality is that if I rise to be the MD of a bank, do you understand? There is nothing that is going to stop me from putting certain policies in place to protect the rights and interests of women. So we also need to continue to break those barriers and break those glass ceilings and make sure that we take no for an answer. You can't tell me I can't do it. Once we have that I can do attitude, I think it would help us a lot, because sometimes maybe women feel like, oh, they've said no, let's not push it. I'm not the one that's going to change, the way things are. I can't change the world. No, we will change the world. We need to change some of those mindsets that, we have and feel like men should, okay, they've said no, let's just allow them. No, I feel like the more we start to stand tall, stand bold, know our rights and emphasize that we know what is right for us, we know what we deserve, I think we will start to see some of these things changing, because really it's time. It's about time. It is.
Okay, so what do you have to say about women being their own worst enemies and bringing each other down?
Yes, that is unfortunately something that is prevalent amongst women. You find that in certain scenarios, you find that men handle those situations better, but women, and it's just because we're more emotional people. We wear our hearts on our sleeves, we put our hearts into certain things. So when we feel any slight disappointment or hurt or pain, we feel like we need to retaliate. Oh, how can you hurt me that way? I need to hurt you back. So I think that we as women need to come together, have, maybe have women-led sessions, women-led counseling, women-led moderations, talking about how it is important for us to lift each other up and not bring each other down. The market is really big enough for every woman out there. And the more we see ourselves as allies, as partners, the more we can start to change some of these policies and some of these barriers that we face in the workplace. Yeah.
So which is the way, we've been talking about women having opportunities, creating opportunities for them in the corporate world. So which are the ways that we can create opportunities, for women in the corporate world?
I think for starters, we just have to educate ourselves. We have to educate ourselves more. Let's go to school. Let's get that master's degree. Let's get that PhD. Let's ask for mentorship programs. Let's start mentorship programs where we can have people understudy us from an early age. So if we have maybe teenagers who want to be like on TV, for example, like you lot, they can come and start from secondary school and start understudying you, start doing internships with you and things like that. So I think the more we start these kids, especially the younger generation, from an early age, letting them know the importance of female representation in the workplace and the importance of knowing our values, then that way we can see more of these significant changes really happening. We can see more of women representation we could be the president. I'm really looking forward to seeing the first female president, So I don't think it's impossible. I really don't think it's impossible. If you do have women that are interested in politics and are dogged enough to stick through it, because most times a lot of jobs or positions, they come with challenges, both for men and women alike. They come with challenges. So as long as you're determined, you're focused, and you're like, I'm going after this thing, and you go after it, you'll be amazed that we'll see a female president someday. We will. So I think starting kids from an early age and just creating more clusters of unity amongst women will help us achieve that. Yeah.
Okay, so as a human resource specialist, what characteristics do you think a female HR person should actually have? The most important ones.
I think one of the most important ones would be empathy. Especially in Nigeria of today. So if we're to narrow it down to Nigeria, I think empathy would be probably the first trait or characteristic that any human resource person should have, because it's a funny time in Nigeria right now, and everybody is going through it. Every single person is growing through it. So having that empathy enables employees to probably give it more of their best, even in spite of their circumstances, personal circumstances, professional circumstances. Once you can empathize with them, they're like, she was very kind. Let me give it my all. Let me give it my best. So I would say empathy is one of the characteristics. And then being knowledgeable. Being very knowledgeable about things pertaining to human resources. Because if you are not conversant with what it takes to, sustain that role, then you'll find yourself struggling, because there will be so many things coming at you. Management is coming at you, employees are coming at you, service providers are coming at you, regulatory bodies are coming at you. You would find yourself completely lost. So I think being knowledgeable is also very, very an important character trait for a human resource person. I would also say that your ability to discern, because people come and pretend. A lot of people come for work, job interviews, and they're pretending. So you must have that discerning mind, that discerning spirit to know that something does not feel right about what this guy is saying. His CV is saying one thing, his mouth is saying another thing. So I would say those are probably the top 3 traits that a good human resource person should have. Yeah.
Okay. So you mentioned that when society rather want to have women more in corporate world, then there are certain things that they should do. But let's go back to the government side. Like, what would the government do in order to make these things easy for from girl child to being a grown woman, working in a corporate world, considering that you as, say, parent or a mentor, you guided this girl to, sent her to school, and then she went through it and she came out excelling, and she actually has the degree. She's finding a way into the corporate world. And we know lots of this corporate world could be like, say, more private than public. And what would you say? I don't know how the government regulatory body is in terms of private sectors more, but then what would you say the government could actually help with in order to have these organizations, corporate organizations, accepting women and making it easy for women to thrive?
I think, for one, policies must be enforced. They are like laws. Anybody can write a law. Do you understand? I can write a law today, and it's a law, but the truth of the matter is that if there is no enforcement, then those laws are bound to be broken. So if the government is to help promoting women, diversity, inclusion in the corporate workplace, they need to enforce the policies, because there are policies that say you shouldn't discriminate by gender or anything like that. So certainly the policies are there, but corporate organizations know this, but they don't care, because who is enforcing? Who is checking me? Who is going to stop me? If I want to hire all men, I'm going to hire all men. Nobody is going to come and tell me anything. So it is the onus is still on the government to make sure that as much as these policies exist, they need to be enforced. If they are not enforced, nobody is going to listen to them. Nobody is going to adhere to them. So it's really that enforcement. So maybe there needs to be an enforcement arm or an M&E, monitoring and evaluation arm, in the Ministry of Labor and Employment that makes sure that, corporate organizations that are duly registered with the CAC meet certain criteria and meet certain, checks that they've incorporated into their corporate policies. I think once we start to see enforcement, then we would start to see significant changes, really.
All right, so as a human resource specialist, were you ever in a situation where you couldn't, handle some of your tasks? And what did you do in those situations?
Almost every day we get challenging tasks, and I just look up and I'm like, oh my goodness, where do I start from? But I'm the kind of person that I love challenges. That's just who I am. I'm not, people that know me would say, Buki, she's going to do it. No matter how difficult that situation is, I just know that it can be done because someone has done this before. So that person might as well be me. So I don't really see obstacles as a big deal, because once they come, my immediate instinct is resolution. How can we solve this issue? So yes, I've had significant challenges, but I've always just been determined and focused. Sometimes you just need to take a step back when those issues come, when those challenges come. Take a step back, pause, have a moment, breathe, and then recalibrate and get back to work. So I think for me, it's not so much about the challenges I faced, because if I start to tell you, we could be here for 2 days.
Okay, so in as much as, we're talking about challenges now, what if those challenges are consistent? And what if it feels like, probably your boss, is actually, how do I put it? When the boss actually favors more men ahead of you as a woman?
Okay, so I saw that happen a little bit at some point in my career, but I didn't even, honestly, I just felt I needed to work harder. That was the mindset I had. I felt like, okay, if they keep promoting these guys ahead of me, and I know I'm doing a good job, my appraisals are showing it, then maybe I just need to work a little bit more harder. Maybe I need to do a little bit more. Maybe I need to stretch myself a little bit more to make sure that I meet up with whatever their criteria is for promotion at that point or salary increase. Because yes, honestly, sometimes, I would say this in favor of men. Sometimes, honestly, they don't, it's not a deliberate, it's not a conscious thing that they're promoting men. It's just easier, so to speak. They're just like, this guy, he's working, promote him. This guy, he's working, promote him. So you need to make yourself more visible. Visibility is very important. You can't hide behind the corners. Yes, I'm doing my job, and expect to get the accolades. You understand? You have to put yourself out there. So as long as I felt like, Buki, you need to put yourself out there. You need to talk to more people. You need to go above and beyond your job description. You need to, you need to bring in more business for the company. I just thought I needed to just do more. As much as I felt I was doing a good job, I knew there was always room for improvement. We all can always improve on where we are. So I just thought, okay, you know what? Go for it, push. And that was how I handled that. Yeah.
Okay.
And it was rewarding at the end of the day. I got my promotion.
That's really something to celebrate about.
Yes.
Okay, so have you been in a position where you were you were being undermined, considering you mentioned that women, you have to put on the extra work? It's like a black guy situation and white guy where you have to put on the extra work. And so for you being a woman also, you have to do that. Have you ever been undermined that you told yourself, no, I have to prove myself?
At the time, I was very young. I came into this, what's it called, this job with a master's degree, a foreign master's degree at that. And I came with about, at the time, maybe 6 or 7 years experience. And the role was it was a fairly senior role. It was a managerial role. And you know, I was grossly undermined. I was completely undermined. But guess what? My line manager was a woman. Exactly, that's the irony. That's what we go back to about women bringing women down. She was a woman, and at the time I had my hands full with so many things in terms of my personal life. I was transitioning, you know, in my personal life, and you know, I think if she had had a little bit of just empathy, you know what I mean, it would have helped me a bit more. At the time, I didn't know what to do. So I resigned. I left the job. I didn't stay for very long because I just felt that, you know, I'm putting in all this work. You're not appreciating me. You know, you keep talking down on me. You know, you keep making me feel bad. And, you know, I said, I deserve better. You know, I was probably 26, 27 at the time. So that was, for me, that was the easiest thing to do. I just felt, you know what, this is not the only job in the world. You can leave. You would find another job somewhere. So I did leave and I did find another job somewhere. But in hindsight, if I was to take that role again at that age with the same woman and the same organization, I would have handled things differently. For starters, I would have gotten to know, you know, her mode of communication, for example, how she likes to communicate, you know, her personality type. It's so important for us in the workplace, especially in the corporate workplace, to understand your boss's personality type. Understand your personality type as well, so that you know how you can marry the two. Because, for example, she was a very technical person. She liked facts and figures, numbers, charts, data. And I am more of a talker. I'm an expressive person. So I would put my reports in Word documents for her and she would flip. She would be really upset. She wanted to see an Excel spreadsheet, which would say the same thing anyway, or a PowerPoint presentation that would have the charts, you know, and all that. But I didn't know that. I was 26. I didn't really know that. I didn't even know about personality types and all that. So I struggled with that and ended up resigning. So I think in hindsight, you know, I would have done many, many things differently. Like, for one, understanding what makes her tick, understanding what makes her happy, so to speak, and how that would influence my deliverables to her. So yeah, I think I probably didn't handle that well by resigning, because I think I lasted only 6 months on that job because it was hectic. But now I know better.
When you talk about, you know, understanding, you know, what is one supposed to do after understanding the person's personality? Because you have a lot of people out there, a lot of workers, I don't want to use the word on air, who lick hands. If you understand what I mean.
I certainly do.
So what separates or what differentiates that from that?
Well, those guys are those guys, or those girls are those girls, those people are those people. We can only advise them to depend on themselves and not on, you know, that stuff you mentioned. Because honestly, if you put in the work, I still believe that if you put in the work and you stand out, which means you are excelling, you know, consistency in the workplace is very important. If I'm a high flyer and I'm consistently flying high, even when I have challenges, I meet my line manager for support, I meet my teammates for support, we help build each other up, men and women alike, you know, and you know, we just keep pushing through and excelling. I don't think there will be any need to be, you know, kissing on anybody, so to speak. You know, I don't think it will be necessary. I think a lot of times we look for the easy route, the easy way out. The easy way out is just to be doing boy for this madam. That's the easy way out.
In the name of loyalty.
In the name of loyalty, you know. But employers, line managers, they know these things. They know. Some enjoy it, unfortunately. Some enjoy it, but some can read right through you and they're just like, you know. So I think let your work speak for itself. There's no need for all that. If you're confident in yourself, you know you're intelligent, you know you're smart, you are proud of the work you put out, then you don't need all that. You would grow. Even if it takes time, you would grow.
Of course, time.
Yeah, time. A lot of us are impatient nowadays. We want that exponential growth. We start work today, we want to become managers tomorrow. No, it takes it. They're building their steps, baby steps. You have to start from somewhere and eventually grow to that managerial position. Yeah.
Okay, so let's speak about managerial position.
Yeah.
You've walked us through your journey as an employee rising up,
Yes.
and the challenges there. But now that you're in a managerial position, don't you think, based on how people view women in charge? Not all women. We know that some are really nice, just like you mentioned about empathy. But then we've seen situations where women in charge tend to go overboard with power. And that is making, let's say the corporate world or men not put women in that particular role in order not to scare off people off their job, just like your own experience. What would you say about that?
I think generally power is something that both men and women get hungry for. So I don't think it would be fair to say women in leadership positions, are power drunk, because men get power drunk too. Exactly.
But society sees it as normal.
But it's not normal. It's not. Their society, it is not normal. So I think for women that have, it's a character, it's a personality thing. It's a character thing. And unfortunately, personalities are really difficult to change. But I think if you have enough representation of women in these leadership positions, certainly when you see the majority doing the right thing, the majority not shouting at employees in the office, a majority not witch hunting their subordinates, then maybe something would trigger in your mind as well, and you start to change and you start to follow what other people are doing, that you see that everybody else is doing it this way. So maybe I should look inwards because I'm not doing it this way and try to change. Because honestly, that power thing is very, very, very rampant in our environment. Very rampant. In fact, I've heard before that when you see women that are tough in managerial workplaces, it's because they are single, it's because they are not married, it's because they don't have children, it's because this. I'm like, where are all these stories coming from? But when men are power drunk, you don't say it's because they are left, right, and center. So there is a huge bias. There is. And the only way we can stop this bias or change the narrative is by we ourselves, working together with each other and stopping, all these petty women trying to bring women down thing. I think it'll change the narrative. Yeah.
Interesting.
All right. Well, that was a really, really interesting, session. Very interesting. I actually learned a lot.
Oh, fantastic.
From you.
I'm happy
Thank
to
you so
hear
much
that.
for that. All right. So, and hopefully when we need you again, you would actually grace us with your presence.
Absolutely. Anytime. I'm happy to have been here.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming in today. And with that, I would say that let's take a short break. And when we come back, of course, we will bring you my daily hustle and more, of course, on entertainment story. Stay with us.